Okay, we have Bob Dalit.
Yes.
If they gave the harlot coins, I'm sorry, if he gave the harlot coins, they are permitted. Wine, oil, flour, and any other similar item that be offered on the altar is prohibited. If he gave the harlot consecrated items, they're permitted. If he gave her birds, they're prohibited. For logic would detect if consecrated animals which the blemish disqualifies are not subject to the qualification of the harlot's wage, and a dog's exchange, birds which a blemish does not disqualify, is it not logical to assume that they are not subject to the disqualification of a harlot's wage and a dog's exchange? Scripture therefore states for any vow to include a bird. Regarding all animals that are prohibited for the altar, their offspring are permitted. Regarding the offspring of a trafer, Eliezer says it may not be offered on the altar, but the comments say it may be offered. Kanana, the son of Antignio, says a non-trafer that suckles from a trafer is disqualified from being offered on the altar. Regarding all consecrated animals that became trafers, we may not redeem them because one may not redeem consecrated animals in order to feed them to dogs. Okay. There are laws pertaining to items consecrated to the altar that are not applicable to items consecrated for the upkeep of the temple. And there are laws pertaining to items consecrated for the upkeep of the temple that are not applicable to the items consecrated to the altar. Items consecrated to the altar can reduce the Temura, and we are liable on their account for pickle, noser, and tummy. Their offspring and milk are prohibited after their redemption. One who slaughters them outside the temple is liable, and we do not give them to craftsmen for their fee. But this is not the case for things consecrated for the upkeep of the temple.
Okay. Now that was the
So I always want to mention, I'm expecting a call from Dr. Dinner. I don't know. He tried to reach me last night. If he calls, I might get off at like 2-3 minutes or something.
Okay, not a problem. Thanks for the heads up.
Thanks.
Okay. Right. So we just learned about the stringencies of the Kodesh Mizbeach. Now here are the stringencies of the Kodesh Bedek Habayis. Yesh b'Kodesh Bedek Habayis ma she'en b'Kodesh Mizbeach. Shestam hekdesh is lebedek habayis. So if somebody simply says this animal is kadosh, and he didn't say is it for bedek habayis. Now, obviously, if he said it about a donkey, then obviously it's for bedek habayis. But if he said it about a sheep, did he intend it to be for a korban, or did he intend it to be for bedek habayis? And the Stam interpretation is that he intended it for bedek habayis. Okay. But hekdesh bedek habayis chal ala kol, and you make literally anything hekdesh for bedek habayis. You can make a table hekdesh for bedek habayis as well. Okay. Umoalin begidulehen, and furthermore, the din of me'ilah applies both to korbanos and to bedek habayis. But if, for example, the offspring is a difference. So if one sanctified a turtle dove and it laid an egg, the egg is not kadosh. As opposed to if one sanctified a chicken and gave it to the bedek habayis, and it laid an egg, that egg also belongs to bedek habayis, and it's also a din of me'ilah on them. If somebody uses it himself, he has to bring an asham me'ilos. Right? It's a big deal. But if somebody misused the egg that was laid by a turtle dove that he brought for that had been designated as a korban, he's not allowed to, but there's no korban me'ilah. Okay. But
they had an animal that he was dying or whatever, and he gave birth to it. That animal would be a treifa then, or would it still be
so we were dealing with the din of the treifa in the Chazariah that you just did, right? The animal is a treifa and it's pregnant, and it gives birth. I mean, the offspring is certainly not a treifa unless it is independently a treifa. But the question that we had over there is, can it be put on the mizbeach because it's the offspring of a treifa? And Rabbi Eliezer said no, and Chachamim said yes.
That was the last one, right? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So back to bedek habayis, ein bahem hana lekohanim, is that the kohanim get no benefit from it, whereas with many of the korbanos, the kohanim either eat the meat or they get the hides. So the kohanim get benefit from korbanos, but they don't get any benefit from bedek habayis. So those are the stringencies of bedek habayis over korbanos. Okay. Mishna Gimel, sneeze coming. Okay, I'll keep there. Okay, relief.
Okay.
Mishna Gimel, Echad Koche Mizbech, Echad Koche Bedek Habayis. So what is universal to both Bedek Habayis and to Koche Mizbech is Ein Mishanin Osam Mikdusha LeKedusha. You cannot change their level of Kedusha. So once, for example, a Korban has been designated as an Ola, you cannot now change it to a Shlamim and vice versa. And similarly, Koche Bedek Habayis, if something has been designated for Bedek Habayis, it can't now suddenly be brought as a Korban. Umakdishin Osan Hekdesh Iloi. And you are able to be makdish it for hekdesh iloi, as we saw in Arachin, when a person pronounces a cherem or something on a korban that he's already had, and he said, okay, so he can't give that animal to a kohen. Elamai, he has to take a look at the value of the animal, and how much somebody would pay for this chus of bringing this animal. When it comes to korbanos, or when it comes to bedek habayis, just like what is the value, and you can so you can declare a cherem on it, and you can makdesh kiddush hekdesh iloi to give it to give the value of whatever it is to the mikdash. Okay, v'mesu yikaveru, and if they die, they must be buried. Okay, there's no redemption, and you cannot feed them to the dogs. This is okay. Rabbi Shimon Omer koche bedek habayis im meisu yipadu. So Rabbi Shimon disagrees with this and says, now when it comes to bedek habayis, if an animal dies, then let it be redeemed. Then they can use the money at least and take the flesh and feed it to the dogs, and that's fine. And the halacha does not follow Rabbi Shimon; it follows the Tanna Kama, who says that no, it's disrespectful in any respect, and even though the mizbech, even though the mikdash loses out on the money, it's still considered disrespectful. It's too disrespectful to just take that and throw it to the dogs from what was kadosh before. Okay. Mishna Daled. Now, seeing as we just spoke about burying things that are aser b'hana, here we come up with a list of all of the different things that have to be buried. And in the next Mishnah, which we'll learn tomorrow, it'll talk about the ones that have to be burned. Okay, Eilu hein hanikbarin. These are the things that have to be buried. Kodshim shehipilu, any kaddish animal that miscarried. Yikaver, the miscarriage must be buried. Hipila shilia tikaver, even if it just miscarried a sort of amniotic sac kind of thing. The tikaver, it still has to be buried. Shor haniskal, an ox that was sentenced to be stoned and was executed because it killed a person, Rahman al-Itzlan. Okay. The egla arufa, and also the egla arufa that is killed on part of the ritual if a dead body is found in the field. Okay, the tzipore matzora, and the birds that are brought by matzora in order to purify him, because after the one bird is shechted and its blood is spilled into the basin, okay, they both become aser b'hana. So one of them gets freed. Okay, but we're talking here about the shechted bird, which is aser b'hana, which is similar to the egla arufa. Okay, the bird that gets freed is not aser b'hana. So even if it's once it's freed, it becomes just like a regular cholin bird. It gets mixed in with all the others, and you're allowed to get benefit from it. Okay, that was Tipori Matzora. Se'ar Nazir. The hair of a Nazir. Remember, he's got to shave it off and burn it under the pot. And that if it gets burned under the pot, obviously it has to be disposed of by burning. So what's the case of this? It must be talking about if he Kodesh, right? So if he became tameh, remember, if the Nazir becomes tameh and he has to start his count again, then he also has to shave his head in order to start his Nazirus again, and that hair has to be buried. So because it can't be used for pillow stuffing, anything like that, must be buried. Heter chamor. the redemption of a donkey. Now, hold on. So what Petech Hamor? This is talking about if he refuses to redeem it, because if he refuses to redeem it, then it is executed. It's chopped in the back of the neck, and once again, this dead donkey is asur b'hana. It must be buried. Basa b'chalav. Did you know that if you have an accident in the kitchen and you cook meat with milk, literal beef, not chicken, because chicken cooked with milk is not asur b'hana. Okay.
I'm sorry. My phone just started talking. I have no idea why. Okay, I'm sorry.
I didn't hear it. Okay, so basa b'chalav. So if you have like a hot beef steak or something, and somebody spilled some milk on it, or some hot milk, let's say, or if it's tata gavra, without getting into the rules of kashrus. But if you have a mixture that is mamish basa b'chalav, that is like basa b'hema with milk, then how do you dispose of it? You don't just throw it in the bin; it actually has to be buried. Okay. The chulin shinishchatu ba'azara. Maybe you throwing it in the bin actually might work, because if it's ultimately going to end up in a landfill, then that kind of that satisfies the need to be buried. The chulin shenishchatu ba'azara, and if he brought a chulin animal into the temple and shechted it there, it's asur to eat it, and it's asur b'hana, and it has to be buried. Rabbi Shimon Omer chulin shenishchatu ba'azara yisarfu. He says no, the din of that one is burning. And the same thing if he shechted a sort of venison in the azara. Okay, the halacha does not follow Rabbi Shimon, and these cases both require burial rather than burning.
Koi would be buried also.
I'm sorry.
Koi.
The
koi.
The coin. Well, everyone has to be buried.
Oh, no, not a koi. A koi.
Koi. Ah, yes, absolutely. Good thinking there. Good thinking, because a koi is safek behema. But according to Rabbi Shimon, well, he'd say that any animal. It's not a distinction on behema or chaya. He says both behema and chaya that get shechted in the azara also have to be buried. So there's no distinction over there. Okay.
How are we going to finish tomorrow?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. So after Temura, we go on to Krisos.
Okay. All right. We are on base Aleph. There are laws that apply to offerings of individuals that do not apply to communal offerings, and there are laws that apply to communal offerings that do not apply to offerings of individuals. For the offering of individuals, make it Temura, but communal offerings do not make it Temura. The offerings of individuals come as both male and female, but communal offerings come only as males. With regard to offerings of individuals, the owner bears responsibility for offering them and bears responsibility for offering them in Nesakim. But regard to communal offerings, the owners do not bear responsibility for offering them, nor have responsibility for offering them in Nesakim. But they do bear responsibility for offering them in Nesakim once the offering has been brought. There are laws that apply to communal offerings that do not apply to offerings of individuals. The communal offerings override the strictures of the Sabbath and override the laws of Tumah. Whereas offerings of individuals override neither the strictures of Sabbath or the laws of Tumah. Rameya said they are not the chavitim of the Kohen Gadol and the Yom Kippur bowl offerings of individuals, yet they override Shabbos and Tumah. Rather, it is because the time for offerings is fixed. Regarding an individual's katos whose owner received the atonement, it must be left to die, but communal katos whose owners have received the atonement are not left to die. Rabbi Yehuda says they must be left to die, and Rabbi Shimon said just as we find with regard to the offspring of katos and with the tumor of katos and with the katos whose owners have died, the matter was stated only regarding the katos of an individual and not regarding communal katos. So too with regard to a katos whose owners have received atonement and a katos whose year has passed, the matter was stated only regarding the katos of individuals, but not communal katos. In some respects, the laws of Kedoshim are more stringent than the laws of Temura, and in other respects, the laws of Temura are more stringent than the laws of Kedoshim. Kedoshim can make a Temura, but Temura cannot make a Temura. A community and partners can consecrate Kedoshim, but they cannot make a Temura, and we can consecrate a Kedoshim, fetuses, and limbs, but we cannot make a Temura with them. The laws of Temura are more stringent than the laws of Kedoshim, for Temura sanctity takes effect on a permanently blemished animal, and the animal does not become to be consecrated with respect to being sheared and worked with. If Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, says the Torah treated an unintentional act like an intentional act with regard to Temura, but he did not treat unintentional act as an intentional one with regard to Kedoshim. But Eleazar says a mixed breed, a trefer, an animal born to a Syrian section, a tumtum, and a Jojan do not become sanctified as they do not sanctify other animals.
Okay, that's it. Horos.
I have to put the fan on here. It's very hot. All right. Bob Dolly. You're gonna have to wait. Quiet. Okay. A nose is punctured, notched or slit, or its lips is punctured, notched or slit, or its front teeth are notched or worn down, or its back teeth are uprooted. Reb Kanada ben Antigno says we do not examine behind the molars nor the molars themselves. The sheath of the male organ is notched, or its genitals of a female is in consecrated animals. The tail is notched in the bone, but not in the joint or in the tip of the tail is exposed to the bone, or if there's a finger breadth of flesh between the joints of the tail. It does not have testicles, or it only has one testicle. Rabbi Ishmael says if it has two pouches, it has two testicles. If it has only one pouch, it has only one testicle. Rabbi Akiva says it should be set on its buttock, and squeezed. If there is a testicle there, it will eventually emerge. It once happened that they squeezed it and it did not emerge and was slaughtered and was found attached to the loins. And Rabbi Akiva permitted it, but Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri prohibited it. Okay.
Okay. Next.
That's it.
Yeah. Zevachim Zayin Beis.
Bird Ola, which one made above in the manner of an Ola offering for the designation of Ola is valid, and if he made it in the manner of an Ola offering for the designation of Katos, it is valid, but it is not credited to the owner. In the manner of a Katos offering for the designation of Ola, or the manner of a Katos offering for the designation of Katos, it is invalid. If he made it below in any of these manners, it's invalid. And all of them do not contaminate with tumor via the throat, but one is subject to the laws of Mila on their account, except for the bird Katos, which was made below in the manner of a Katos offering for the designation of Katos. If a bird Ola was made below in the manner of a Katos offering for the designation of Katos, Reb Eliezer says one is subject to Me'ila on its account, but Reb Yoshua said one is not subject to Me'ila on its account. Said Reb Eliezer, if a Katos offering which is not subject to Me'ila when it is offered for its own designation is nevertheless subject to Me'ila when it is changed, when one changed its designation. When then an Ola offering which is subject to Me'ila when it is offered for its own designation should surely be subject to Me'ila when he changes designation. Said Rabbi Yeshua to him, not so. If this could be said of a Katos offering whose designation was changed to an Ola, it's because he has changed his designation to something which is subject to Me'ila. Can the same be said of an Ola offering whose designations, well, one changed to a Katos, in which case he has changed his designation to something which is not subject to Me'ila? Then Reb Eli answered to him, let the most holy offerings which are slaughtered in the southern part of the courtyard and which is slaughtered to the lesser holiness designation serve as proof, in that he has changed their designation to something not subject to Me'ila, and yet they are subject to Me'ila. So too, you should not wonder at an Ola offering that even when one changes designation to something not subject to Me'ila, it nevertheless remains subject to Me'ila. So Rabbi Yeshua to him, not so. If this can be said of the most holy offerings which were slaughtered in the southern part of the courtyard, and which he slaughtered for lesser holiness designation, is because he changed the designation to something which has forbidden parts and permissible parts. Can you say the same for an Ola offering whose designation when changed to something which is entirely permissible?
Okay.
And do we finish this tomorrow? Let me see. We finish this tomorrow.
What's Zvachim? No.
There's another one.
Another volume, yeah.
Right. Okay. Here we go. And we are on Gimel base. If one spills water in a public domain and someone else is injured by it, he is liable for his injury. If one hides thorns or glass, or one makes a fence of thorns or a fence that fell into a public domain and others are injured by them, it is liable for their injury. If one puts out his straw or his stubble into a public domain to become fertilizer and someone else is injured by it, he is liable for his injury. And whoever seizes it first acquires it. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says all who litter the public domain and cause damage are liable to pay, and whoever seizes them first acquires them. If one overturns dung in a public domain and someone else is injured by it, he is liable for his injury. if two potters were walking and one after the other, and the first one stumbled and fell, and the second one stumbled over the first one is liable for the injuries of the second one. If
Okay.
one came
That's it. That's 3.
and everything. Okay, hey, Olive. How does one extend the towns? A town is recessed a house is accessed where a house protrudes, a tower is recessed where a tower protrudes. These are the ruins 10 feet high and bridges or mausoleums in which there is a dwelling. They extend the boundary opposite them. And they make it a square tablet so that one may gain the corners. We grant a carpif to a town. These are the words of Rameya. But the sages say they did not say the rule of carpif except between two towns. If this one has 70 cubits and a fraction that has 170 cubits and a fraction, a carpif is granted to the two of them to become as one. Similarly, 3 villages form a triangle, and there are 141 and a third cubits between the two outer ones. The middle one causes all of them to become as one.
Okay.
Okay.
And Klaus.
Okay. Zion Dalit. If wine or an olive sap fell into it and it changed parts of its color, then there remains not 40 saw with the color of water, you cannot immerse therein. If 3 lugim of water fell into which fell a quart of wine and its color became like the color of wine, falls into a mikveh, they do not disqualify it. If 3 lugim of water less a quart of into which a quart of milk and its color remain like the color of water, fall into a mikveh, they do not disqualify it. The Yochanan Minori says everything follows the color. If a mikveh contains exactly 40 saw and 2 persons went down into the mikveh and immersed themselves one after the other, the first one becomes tahar, the second one remains tameh. And some of the first water gets pushed out, so they don't have the right amount. If the Buddha says that the feet of the first one were still touching the water, the second one also becomes tahar. If one immersed therein a thick blanket and lifted it out, as long as part of it touches the water, whoever immerses himself becomes tahor. Regarding a leather mattress or cushion, as soon as one raises their lip out of the mikveh, the water within them becomes drawing water. What should one do? He should immerse himself then and lift out with the bottoms upwards.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
You can take a slow walk now to
Take a slow walk to shul, yeah.
Thank
you very much.
Tomorrow I don't think I'll be late. Early, I mean.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.